streaming
Okay.
live
Yeah,
stream.
I think that's it.
Is that
Okay,
Facebook?
it went live.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Oh, my electricity came back on. I'm in the car because the electricity went off, so I was in any position to do any of this. I'm actually doing from my phone. So luckily, I came
So,
and brought my computer.
so you are on hurricane watch.
I don't know why the electricity came off in East Point. There's bright skies. So I don't know what happened, but we're back and we're live. And welcome to Monday Night Live, everybody. Sorry for the late start.
Welcome, everybody. Come on in, come on in, come on in. But as we come on, there is a Category 5 hurricane, Milton, threatening to come on the Gulf shores and the west coast of Florida. So, and of course, we're not
wow.
fully recovered from the last hurricane. I was talking with Minister Candace last night, whose brother lives there, and she was asking him, where's he going to go? He said, where can I go? Like it's going to hit. I've heard several reports from people in Florida today. People trying to get out of town. People don't know where to go. It's going to hit such a broad area. Central Florida, Tampa, St. Pete, Orlando, which is very heavily populated. So, and then the discussion, Kathy, you and Calvin had about what causes the most damage. It weakens when it comes over land, but it's the wind and the rain that causes the flooding. So, and the scenes of devastation in North Carolina are mind-boggling. So, yeah. So,
I have
yeah,
family. I have lots of family in the Clearwater, Florida area, right up between Tampa and St. Pete. I have a
mhm.
lot of family there, so I've been worried about. Like you say, they like, well, where can we go? I'm like, just come to Georgia. Come on up to Atlanta.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of them are doing that. I mean, even though what comes across Florida comes up here, but like you said, hopefully it weakens. But yeah, they're in our thoughts and prayers.
The Atlanta Motor
Um,
Speedway is opening up for any guest that's traveling from Florida up, needing a place to park or just a place to have.
nice. That's
Wow.
really good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they really do real nice up there. They have places for RVs to plug up, and you can set up a campsite and everything if you need to.
They're opening
It's
up.
really nice up there.
So some of you know that I drove to Alabama yesterday, and we drove past the Talladega Speedway. They had a race yesterday.
Oh wow.
And I mean, I mean, just seeing that sight, just thousands of people camped out, I mean, everywhere. And, they packed the stands.
Hmm.
And then we hit the traffic coming back from Alabama to Georgia.
I live out here near that traffic, so we figured out
Yeah,
when to get out of the house and when to stay in the house based on
yeah,
NASCAR's traffic.
yeah. NASCAR is something else. I mean, it's really some fanatic supporters and followers. I mean,
Yeah.
so I've ridden past the Talladega Speedway a lot, but never when something is going on there. And it boggled my mind to see this, like people, tents, 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 RVs, 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 like people like sit out there to be for days, sit out there to be out there for days. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Well, it's so many things that come to mind when we think about these hurricanes, right? The first thing I think about is the whole talk on the infrastructure, right? And how what was that in Norfolk, Virginia, where that major flooding, or was it Tennessee that it took out a bridge up that way? But the flooding and stuff, and thinking about this Category 5, Hurricane Katrina, it decided to stick around for like 3 days back in 2005. And of course the levees and stuff fell. Just thinking about a lot of our stuff, the Army Corps of Engineers, how they've been out to Lake Altoona and looked at some of the infrastructure in Georgia. And just to think, we're just a flood away from major disasters a lot of times. And I really, would like to know where they are, when things like this happen, where are they at with the talks? I mean, you don't have to really talk a lot. You got to do something about it. You see what's going on. I mean, natural disasters are going to happen, But you know, I mean, I just think that we can do more planning. We can, instead of bickering.
Yeah, I think part of it is acknowledging global warming and the effects on the environment and the atmosphere, the more frequent storms, more powerful storms, and the unprecedented reach of the storms. For instance, in North Carolina, many people have lost everything and did not have flood insurance because they're in areas that are not floodplains. In some areas, they're actually in the mountains. And you keep hearing person after person say, we don't have this happen here, but it's happened. And so I was talking to, I guess Minister Candace works in the insurance industry, and we were talking about the difference in an act of nature and an act of God and what the insurance industry will cover and what they will not cover. But it just seems we're moving because of global warming into an unprecedented time where these catastrophes happen, and the response of FEMA is being questioned in terms of what they're offering people. At the same time, we're giving billions away to other nations and causes and wars. So I think there's something bigger going on here, and when we start to connect the dots between the fires in the West and the tornadoes in the Midwest and the hurricanes and the impact upon people and the insurance industry pulling out of some states like Florida and California because of the frequency and the depth of the destruction and the cost of it. Yeah, I think there's a bigger picture going on here that we have to adjust to. And in this political season, I mean, they're making it a part of the presidential campaign, but not in a way that I think is long-term or helpful to people. It's, trying to make it a partisan issue, and it's really not that. People are hurting and confused and bewildered. So, yeah.
And it's worldwide. In Antigua, we're having tornado watches. We don't get tornadoes. And
Wow.
we've had a tornado watch 2 days in a row. My niece is there, and she's like, "We're
Mm-hmm.
having a tornado watch." That's not. We don't have anything to prepare for tornadoes. Hurricanes, yes, hurricanes are widespread. They're not condensed. It's like, I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if our structures are tornado ready. I don't know if any structure is tornado ready, but
Yeah, I hadn't heard that. I hadn't heard
yeah,
that, Kathy. Yeah, say
yeah.
more. I mean, is it because of weather patterns or?
I guess I don't know what's going on, but she's the news reports are coming through, and she forwarded it to our family chat, and she's like, we're having tornado watches 2 days in a row, and it's crazy. I mean, you get water spouts, you get the tornadoes that are out in the ocean. Those, they don't come to land. We don't get those. And to have a tornado watch, it's crazy. I mean, can you imagine a tornado
Yeah,
on a 108 square mile island? It could wipe a lot of things away really quickly.
that's pretty unprecedented. I had not
Yeah.
even heard that story. Wow. Yeah. Tornado. Wow. So we do
And
have
these
tornadoes.
insurance,
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, and these insurance companies are combing through, whether they'll pay for something or not. I mean, and if you have deductible, you got to meet that deductible. So just even, that can bring stress on a family right now. If you're looking at the cost of the groceries and things like that, it can really bring stress on, most people are living paycheck to paycheck right now. And if you have something like your basement floods during this time of that heavy rain that just passed, I had erosion on the side of my house, from, it was just a bunch of water. So now I have to get somebody to come out there and look at it. But the insurance company is gonna be like, you ain't in a flood zone, which technically I'm not. But if it rains like that, then you know you got to be prepared.
I heard the people, the families in Buckhead that were flooded from the hurricane. One of the ladies on the news today saying that her insurance company's not paying. She's not in a flood area. I'm like, wow.
She said, what?
Yeah,
I'm
that's a
sorry.
big issue.
Yeah, she's not in the flood zone. Even though her
Uh,
house flooded, she's not in the flood zone.
wow.
Insurance is not paying. So I'm like,
You're
oh
not in the
my
flood zone, so your insurance will not pay for it. And That's just
Yeah.
crazy. But Governor Kemp, he didn't even cover that last major thing that happened out like in Noonan and stuff like that. He
Mhm.
didn't pay for that that disaster that happened. I think it was a tornado or something that came through there, and a lot of them people still didn't get paid. They still didn't get money from our state. So I don't know.
So when they say the state is under a state of emergency, doesn't that mean that funds come out to help in all the situations? I mean, if it's a state of emergency because something broke, then you shouldn't even have to rely on your insurance company because there should be funds that get allotted, right? I would think. And I guess in an ideal world.
Yeah, we'll have to get somebody with expertise in that area. I think FEMA provides low cost or low interest loans in some instances and some grants in some instances, but what they cover, when they cover, how they cover, why they cover, I think that's a sort of moving target. I mean, one of the politicized talking points is that uh, we're spending $7,500 on people in Israel in terms of our defense of our support of Israel and defense of Israel, but $750 here. But the $750 is an initial payment to a longer process for FEMA to get funds. And the point that has been raised several times already is so true in that many people impacted by flooding don't have flood insurance because they're not in a floodplain. And so that's the issue I keep hearing over and over, in particular in North Carolina, where some of the flooding happened in the mountains. And they interview these bewildered people saying this doesn't happen here. So they had no reason to have this rider or this coverage. And so, but now they have lost everything through flooding. And so I think this is the bigger picture. I think that um, whoever gets elected, I think I think the dots will start to get connected that this is a broader issue in terms of the insurance industry, in terms of the frequency of storms and calamities and the power of them and the destruction of them and what people are not covered for. And if they're Americans and they lose everything, what do we do to help them, to restore them? Or in some instances, people argue to be made whole again. And so then you get into who deserves it and why do they deserve it? What's the scale? I mean, how do you verify claims? And then the insurance industry is reminding us that we should have videos and pictures of everything so that we're able to document losses and not to start doing repairs. And if you have an insurance claim until you get it verified. So maybe, Candace comes to mind. I know she's in that industry right now. Maybe others that we know we can pull on to kind of talk about that. I don't think this is going away anytime soon. I don't know what the winter will bring, but the hurricane season goes through December, Kathy, does it? Or
Like early
November?
November. November.
Okay. November, okay.
But the thing is, you gotta first believe that global warming is a thing. Some people don't believe it's a thing, and but if you just talk to people like in Alaska and things like that, they'll tell you how icebergs are
Icebergs, yeah.
melting rapidly, and when something happened on one side of the earth, the other side of the earth is affected. The tsunamis and everything like that, and so I just think that as far as help, charity begins at home in my book. And I don't understand how FEMA can be at, like they said, they one hurricane away from not having money. I don't understand how, or even down to a state like Governor Kemp will send money back or give scrutiny to, like, say for instance, the south side of town, go through all the red tape with them before they give them funds. But the people on the north side gets funds with no problem. They get the rental assistance with no problem. But all the other people, we have to be scamming, and then you don't find out till later that the big scammers were the people that they gave it to with no problem. And so I'm just thinking about the part about with Governor Kemp, how can you send back federal funding when people are actually in need in areas that never got a say so. in you know, and whether to be able to accept the funds or not.
You know, I saw something talking about North Carolina and the mountains. I think I shared it with some of you guys, but talking about apparently the area that, I don't know, and I don't know, I don't know if this is true or not, but the areas that were flooded, um, they have pockets of some mineral, something that's needed, and the townspeople, they wanted to increase the mining of these minerals, or I think it was cobalt or something. And the people in the town, they were all against it, and they were all making sure that it wasn't happening. And these same people now have no homes. So, you know,
I heard
it's,
that
you know, the
as well.
conspiracy theory thing, but
I heard that as well. I heard well, they were saying now pay attention to what's about to happen to their land. The government's gonna probably eventually take their land and declare it uninhabitable, like they did in Maui, taking some of the people's land in Maui and Hawaii. But they produce, I think it's lithium for
yeah,
batteries.
yeah.
In that small town. My husband and I years ago, we rode up in those mountains in a semi, y'all. I've never in my life been so terrified. Because we were in the mountains. When I say up in the mountain, and there's nothing on the side of the road but a little small guardrail that will not hold a semi and a trailer. And the trucks were so close, passing each other. It's like you could reach out and shake hands. That's how narrow the roads are. And you just
Wow.
circling, going up and up and up the mountain. I'm like, oh my God.
Was that in
It's so
Northwest
scary.
Arkansas? Where was that?
This is up in North Carolina. It's called the
Oh,
Gorge.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I know that in Arkansas, going toward it's no longer there, toward Fayetteville, Arkansas.
Hmm.
Northwest Arkansas is the same way. It was back in the day. Now
Mm,
it's a highway, but we used to call it the Pig Trail.
mm,
But it was a one way. It was one stop before you got to that area that you were saying, like one way,
mm-hmm,
and then I mean, really, really narrow road,
mm-hmm,
and that's when the altitude changed.
mm-hmm. Yep.
If
Yep.
your ears would pop because you were constantly going up.
And we
Yeah.
came across one little gas station. This is where all the truck drivers were parking for the night. And oh, I'm cringing just thinking about it. We had to park the way it's positioned. Just imagine this building on top of a cliff in the center of the cliff. I
Yep.
mean, there's nothing there but a cliff. And my husband is backing up. I'm like, oh, I said, just let me out the truck.
Right.
Oh my God. He's like, I got
Yep.
it, sweetie, I got it. I'm like, oh my God, please stop backing up. Because I couldn't see, but he could see, but I was panicking. I'm like, there's no guardrail back there. There's nothing but a cliff.
Yep.
I'm like, and I promise I would never go back to North Carolina up in those mountains. Those mountains are very steep. And so when I saw the flood, I'm like, where's this water coming from?
Coming from, and why is it not running away? Like, I don't understand flooding in the mountains. It seems like it would
Because it rained.
it seems like the mountains would, the water would, I don't know, like,
Yeah.
don't rivers don't run up.
Yeah.
So is there something at the top that's coming down? Like, I don't understand.
They don't, yeah. But the only thing I kept telling myself is that, well, it did, what, 2 days before it poured down rain for a couple of days. And so the mountain is just saturated. So that's the only thing I could think of because I'm like, where's the water coming from? I could see the mudslides, especially if the ground is super wet and trees or older trees are not rooted and they tend to start to slide. I could see the mudslides, but I just couldn't see all the water that was coming down. But my heart goes out to those people. I was
Just
Yeah.
think those houses are just like embedded in the mountains per se. If you've ridden up like the northwest side, I would drive, literally I drive through Birmingham to keep from going up to the northwest side of Georgia. If you go up there, I mean literally you seem like you're riding on the guardrail. And if you've ever been up there and the fog is dropped down to like it's touching your car and you can't really see anything,
yeah.
and those trucks fly around those corners. I guess they used to it, but it's scary. It's terrifying.
It really. I was gonna ask you. We was talking about the weather and how the storms are just so intense. My kids, we talk about stuff all the time, and they were telling me about what's it called? The government manipulating the weather through cloud seeding. Have you guys heard of that?
Yeah.
Cloud seeding, where the government manipulates the weather.
Yeah.
My mind always goes back to our conversations because, of course, my kids they real what you call them, theorists, and it's like
Conspiracy theorist.
conspiracy theory. The government is doing this. This is the government. This is the government. And I'm like, I can't see it, but
I
see it.
I personally think you have to be open to, don't shut it off because you just never know. I'm
Right.
not one to run all the way down the rabbit hole,
Yeah.
but sometimes they bank on the people who will just say, "Oh, it's just conspiracy theories," because then they can do what they want. But because I look,
Yeah.
But you gotta also think that it's science too, though. It's science too. It's all in discovery as
Yes,
well. It
yes.
could be to counteract things as well. I mean, you don't just have storm
The Earth
chasers
has a
just
way
be storm
of
chasers. They're actually trying to figure some things out. But why would our current administration be trying to do something like produce a natural disaster right here? It wouldn't help our current administration at all with that.
Yeah, I suppose. I guess.
maybe a little bit of both.
Yeah, right. Maybe, it's being done and maybe they shutting a blind eye to it and say, I don't know. I didn't know. Who knows? I don't know.
It's this is gonna sound funny, but it's like I watched this movie once where the person would put something in someone's pocket so that when they went out the door, the alarms would go off, and while they're getting searched, they would walk out with even more expensive stuff, right? So it's like, yes, global warming is happening, yes, and we're going to do some stuff that's for our benefit. That way it looks like it's under the guise of global warming too,
Right.
it gets blamed for everything. So I kind of try to, not put blinders on, but not be, walk around with tinfoil on my head either.
Right.
No, you didn't go with the tinfoil. You went all the way. You went all the way there. You went all the way there. I mean, Area 51. You went all the way to Area 51. But yeah, I was just thinking. So, and then they say don't become like a TikTok or a podcast. Everything on a podcast or everything on TikTok is 100% true.
Right, exactly.
A lot of this stuff is AI generated as well. But I did think that a lot of the stuff that, as far as the food is concerned, is so true. Like, I know that when I was in Turkey, I felt so good because a lot of the foods were organic, right? And so they have certain standards set for the food. Like, say for instance, I saw something where they were saying McDonald's, when you go to other countries, McDonald's just have, potatoes, salt, and like 3 ingredients for the French fries. But us, we have about 19 for ours. Why is that? Because we spend more time. They say something about the stuff will last longer, the grease, the oil will last longer, the preservatives, things like that. And I told Yummy, I said, that's one thing we did in school, culinary school. They told us to bring our favorite meal in from each restaurant, and we put it on the counters for the whole semester. Y'all will be surprised. Most of that food was still there. Most of that food had not broken down, and that's like awful. I mean, after you seen that, you be like, okay, I'm gonna go out here and just I'm gonna cut up me a potato. I want some French fries. I'm gonna cut me a potato up, and I'll eat me some French fries.
I'm not surprised at all, Shannon, because I'm like, yeah. My body told me a long time ago, don't eat that. I know you love it, but it doesn't love you back. So I started researching stuff. I'm like, oh, yeah. I try to buy organic. I shop at local farmers that I know growing their vegetables. They even go to as far as treat the soil before they grow, make sure the soil is good and healthy. And then they rotate. They only grow in season and they rotate where they plant stuff. So yeah, it costs more, but yeah, I'm worth it.
It, don't the soil have to be like free of anything for like 7 years or something to be considered really organic?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
it's a whole bunch of
it's
other
a lot of stuff. Yeah.
stuff, right?
The way the guy told me, they do let the soil rest before they plant something on in that area section of it. They have sections where they plant stuff, and so they rotate it 7 years. So yeah, yeah.
All I'm thinking is just some of our questions, it's got to be answered regardless of who is in the White House. Like some of these things, that the concerns we have, they got to be taken care of. Like this whole insurance situation where people, you say, well, you didn't have flood insurance. How did we know the water was gonna sit in here like this? And like, what are the people supposed to do? Or people like actually need food stamps that are working, and then they say, well, we'll give you $12. $12? What can a family do with $12 of food stamps, for
Oh,
real?
girl.
you know
I stopped.
I just think
Those are
it's
my
ridiculous.
hospital. I'm like, I applied one time and I was denied. I never applied again. I'm like, whatever. And I was a single.
Yeah,
That was I even.
my
I had just moved to Georgia. I was working, but I didn't have my foot steady, and I needed assistance.
my dad had $12,
Uh,
and he was spending like 300, I think, on one prescription.
mm,
So how in the world, like, no, something's got to
never
change.
got food stamps. Never.
Yeah.
So today was the deadline to register to vote in Georgia. And now those little voting booths are the places where we go and our prayers and thoughts turn into action.
Yeah.
So I am so proud of Madison Norwood, who did a voting drive for us a couple weeks ago. And we did have a couple people sign up and a couple people check their status to make sure that their registration was valid, because if you've not voted in a minute, you might have been removed or you might have a different polling place. And so we want people to be vigilant, cognizant, and to make your plan to vote, whether you are doing an absentee ballot, voting early, or voting on the actual election day in November. We're now less than 30 days out. And so happy to remind people about that, encourage people about that. And Georgia is a battleground state, a must-win state, because of something called the Electoral College that goes back to the founding of this country and the issue of enslavement and trying to give parity to the population in the South in comparison to the population in the North, because slaves were not considered people. They could not vote. And so in order to give political parity in the South, they created this system known as the Electoral College, where it's not one person, one vote for the presidential race, but it's delegates per state. And so it's been high time to get rid of that system, but it doesn't seem like that system is going anywhere anytime soon. So that's why we have to vote, because whoever gets the delegates in Georgia and Pennsylvania and a few other key, quote unquote, swing states will take the election. And it is razor thin. Many of us do not understand why it is so close, but it is so close. And it seems part of what's happening in our world is that we have been desensitized to lies and drama. And in particular, one candidate just saying anything that comes to his mind and anything that comes out of his mouth. And that desensitization, I think, hurts us. And we have people saying, I don't know whether I'm even going to vote because I don't know that my vote matters. I don't know if Minister Lulu, you want to share about your grandson, and he's not eligible to vote. But my response to some people who are looking for a reason to vote is that sometimes your vote is for the betterment of humanity. One of the issues, for instance, is insulin. There's so many people who are insulin dependent, and we cut it to $35 for seniors, but there's so many other people who are not seniors who are insulin dependent, and so many other decisions that'll be made, including probably 2 more Supreme Court retirements and selections by the next elected president. So, and then the down ballot races, which sometimes are more impactful locally than the presidential race. But It's also come up in this conversation today. We've got to remain engaged and vigilant no matter what, no matter who's elected. And so that's my plan. That's my pledge.
What did you guys think of the debate?
Vice presidential debate.
Mhm.
I thought we had a different Republican candidate.
I didn't
He
even
was cool.
recognize him. I was like, who
Yeah, he
is
was. Yeah, JD Vance was cool, calm, and collected. He didn't come out in that kind of insensitive, belligerent, just spouting off the top of his head that the Haitian immigrants are eating cats and dogs. You know, we didn't get that one. And so a lot of people tuned it out because it was so, quote unquote, innocuous, so plain, so peaceful. These two men going at each other. I don't think it was a game changer. It seldom is in terms of the vice presidential pick, but because the stakes are so high and because there would not be another presidential debate, we thought it might be a chance to impact the race. But there's just a sliver of the electorate that's undecided. And so people often wonder how they are impacted by such things as the vice presidential debate. So, you know, it was what it was. I don't know if anybody else has thoughts to it.
I liked the way that Walsh answered some of the questions. I liked him pulling it back and say, okay, yeah, but yes, the rhetoric, yes, but what, I liked him pulling it back and saying, you guys know that this was never going to happen because you can't blame anybody for the fact that this happens in Congress. It's not the president, so you can't blame the president. So I liked some of that because I think sometimes with all the stuff, people forget what the presidents and the vice president can and cannot do, right? They have certain powers and they have certain things that they cannot do, and certain things sit in Congress. And it's like if Congress, it's like saying Obama didn't do nothing when you heard them say we're going to block every single thing he does, right? So it's like, can you really blame the president for everything when Congress sits there and they go back and forth and don't do nothing for their money that they get forever, So
yeah,
that
good
I
point.
like put back. It's
So
like this makes no sense. Stop sharing this mess.
Good
I
point.
I have one question. I want to know, so how does the down ballot help? I mean, with the election being right around the corner, how does that help? Because I've heard some, some pretty well-known people talking about they're gonna do a down ballot, and I'm trying to see how does that help the situation at all? Can you explain that a little bit better to me? Because I'm hearing it everywhere, but how does it help?
So basically, you're talking about all of the other races below the top of the ticket, which is the presidential race every 4 years. But Congress itself is reelected every 2 years, the House of Representatives. And in most states, the down ballot would include some Senate races, some gubernatorial races, some lieutenant governor race, ballot initiatives and issues, judges, magistrates, prosecutors. For instance, the Fulton County prosecutors on the ballot, Fani Willis. And so those tend to impact us in terms of local politics, whether it's municipal, whether it's county, whether it's state, in terms of people that we're going to have to engage with, the judicial officials that we elect. These are the magistrates and judges that we will come before. And so a lot of times people don't pay attention to that because they're focusing just on the race at the top of the ballot that happens once every 4 years. And it does impact us nationally and internationally, but sometimes the races that are below the presidential race have a greater impact on us in terms of taxation, in terms of rules, laws, in terms of initiatives that are being put forth and proposed, and in terms of, for instance, I don't think there'll be anything in terms of Rockdale County and the city of Conyers, but at some point, what happened with this toxic fire and the plume of smoke, I'm sure it's going to be addressed in some ballot measure. And so that would be an example of a ballot issue that's local. That if I were in Rockdale County, I were in the city of Conyers, I would want to let my voice be heard. There are already lawsuits and there are whistleblowers saying, we told you this was a problem, that this could happen, and now they want to shut it down permanently. So, but down ballot just has to do with the issues that affect us, bread and butter issues, municipalities, Morrow, for me, South Fulton, city of Atlanta, whatever city you're in, then the counties, There's a 5-county metro area here, and some say a 15-county broader area. So municipalities, counties, and then the state magistrates and judges that are elected. So that's kind of what it refers to when you're talking about down ballot issues. And sometimes
Okay,
we're
well,
not
I
aware of
think,
some of the,
thank you for that.
yeah, sometimes we're not even aware of some of the issues till we go into the voting booth, particularly issues, and you sit there and have to read, are you for this? Or are you against this? And if you haven't heard about it before you've gone in, sometimes I've seen people get frustrated, irritated. What is this? I don't really understand it. Is it a trick? But I find them, even if you've not heard of them, if you just take the time to read through them, you can come to, a point of understanding. I would support this or I would not support that. So, yeah.
Santara, how was your trip?
Hey, I'm Lula. I'm sorry. I didn't quite hear you.
I was asking, how was your trip?
Oh, how is my trip? I'm sitting outside now.
Okay.
Just finished eating gumbo. I think I've eaten gumbo almost every day.
Oh my
Nice.
God.
Very nice. Very nice. Very nice.
Are
Yeah.
you still at the conference?
No, the conference ended Saturday. So I think I'm the only person still around.
Oh,
Everybody else went back to work today except me because I have no job.
well, how was the conference?
Oh, the conference was wonderful. I just wish that, they have a Georgia chapter, which I plan to join. These are like-minded people. I'm so glad to have people where, we can be on one accord and we think alike, and it's good. I mean, and we had a philosopher who was speaking Saturday. I was actually just looking at, he just came out with a book that I would recommend to you all so that you all don't think that I'm some outlier. There are other people with this same concept, but the name of the book, he's a philosopher out of Tufts University, and his book just came out this year. And the book is called The Afterlife of Race. And his name is Lionel McPherson. I can send it, but anyway, he goes through and basically supports the argument that it's not about race. It's 100% not about race. It's about lineage. And he makes this argument in his book to explain the difference. And he uses, this is a philosopher who has a PhD, who teaches at, on a college level at a prestigious university. And he makes the argument that, and I'm sure he's done the research. I know I may not be able to always explain everything in a way that people can understand, or maybe sometimes people just reject the idea, which I get that because we all think differently. But this conference it was about reparations, but in order to even begin to push for reparations, the most basic thing is who would be eligible for reparations if we ever got to that point. So that's why it's important to kind of to identify who would be in the United States, who would be included in the justice claim. So the ADOS movement makes the argument that only, as Du Bois would call us, American Negroes, or as we're called today, African Americans, those of us who had grandparents, just not grandparents, but who had ancestors who were a part of the American slavery system, not someone who just immigrated to the United States just because they're Black. So part of this movement is identifying who is a Black American. So anyway, that's the gist. And we had Dr. Cornel West was there. He spoke.
Nice.
Nina Turner, she spoke. Nina Turner, if you all watch CNN, she's always on CNN giving.
Oh, yes.
She's a wonderful. I think her speech was probably my favorite of all at the conference. And Pastor Monty, I think Dr. Cosby. He was
Yes,
there.
Kevin. Yes, Kevin Cosby. I saw your picture with him. What a great picture. I love him.
And
I appreciate him.
Yeah, and I told him you were my pastor. He's like, oh, he's a great man. So yeah, I've been following. I've been following Dr. Well, he said you were a great man, and I said, yeah. I told him that I attend Bible Way and that you were my pastor. And I
Mm-hmm.
had been, been following him on Twitter for a long time. So it was
Mm-hmm.
nice. And he, prior to um, the summit, well, it was in New Orleans, but prior to it being here in New Orleans, he was the host of this conference at his church back in Louisville, St. Stephen. They were hosting the conference, so he's closely aligned with the ADOS movement. And there's also
Nice.
a pastor out of Atlanta. I was not familiar with him until this. He gave the keynote on Friday. Yeah, Friday, and he is his name is Dr. Chris Campbell. So there are a lot
Mm-hmm.
of people. I mean, we had pastors, and I will say that Dr. Cosby, I have it written down, but I wasn't really prepared to do a lot of speaking tonight. But I love the fact how he laid out biblical scriptures for reparations.
Okay,
And
nice.
he made the case from a biblical standpoint. So we had preachers, we had philosophers, we had a young Black man who's an economist at Emory University. These are all like legit people with degrees behind them who are making the same argument. So I know it may seem like a fringe movement per se, but I feel like things have to start somewhere. So I think
Mm-hmm.
that this conference had hundreds of people. I was kind of blown away that it was that many people who showed up for this conference. And
Mm-hmm.
and just speaking to some of the attendees, these are very, very smart people. Like a lot of them, I met some a history professor. He's at UNC in Greensboro. He's part of the
Mm-hmm.
movement. I met, someone
Nice.
who's like a doctor out in. So these are like really, I was like, wow, these are some smart people. So they're implementing like a research institute, and the people who are behind the research institute are all doctors. They all hold doctoral degrees in different disciplines. They highlighted to us, how stress and how our heart health is affected by just being a Black American because of all the things that we have to endure and all the
Mm-hmm.
things that we go through. They had who else? They had they had economists. I mean, like I said, economists, philosophers, pastors, like quite a few people, who hold like I think of as like they have prestigious careers who were all at this conference, and all of us are kind of on the same page of like how things have to shift in this country as far as like how we define race. And I will say, I mean, maybe I'm making a leap, but I think most of the people are not on board with Kamala for president. I mean, it is what it is. I'm one of them.
You say you were with your tribe, huh?
Yeah, I said, I think I found my tribe. Thank you. Yeah, so not just to hijack the conversation, but it was a great conference. And I will say this, one of the biggest things that came out of the conference is
Mm-hmm.
that they're working on crafting a framework for reparations, a federal framework for reparations that they're hoping to get turned into a bill that would go before Congress. So
Mm-hmm.
the people are really serious about, pushing this issue forward. So, I mean, so anyway, that's that. And it was overall a great conference, a lot that we learned. And I couldn't attend every session because some of them ran concurrent to each other. So hoping that they'll share the video on the other sessions. But this was my first time attending this particular conference. I mean, I've been following kind of this movement for years now, and it was just great to meet other people of like mind. So, and I will say, Kathy, they're one of my table mates, and we exchanged a lot of information. He's Jamaican, so this is not just African Americans who are involved. It's
Right.
allies who are also from different backgrounds. So not just and he's a Jamaican who lives in he lives in the Bronx, and not the I'm sorry, Brooklyn. And another young lady, she's also of Caribbean descent, and she lives in Harlem, and she was there. So you have a lot of allies who are they get what we're saying, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, so they showed up to support.
I'm curious. As to, and this is for anybody on here. You know, Santera talked about the levels of education, the levels of people that were there, and I'm curious as to what. So it's one thing to not be for Kamala, but I guess I'm curious as to, like, okay, we don't want her, but I wonder where their mindset would be. Like, are you going to just not vote at all? Are you going to say we don't want her? We would actually prefer Trump. I'm just always wondering, because I mean, okay, yes,
I could
he may
venture
not.
to say, yeah, I mean, I could venture to say that 100% are anti-Trump. So
Okay,
it has
okay,
absolutely nothing to do with Trump.
okay,
And
yeah,
sometimes it's about, and I think, and referring to what I think Shannon said earlier, the ADOS movement, it might have been, I think it might have been 2020. They have previously advocated down ballot voting. And Shannon, to your point, their whole thing is down ballot is saying, it's letting the Democratic Party know that we showed up, but we just didn't vote for the top of the ticket. It's pretty much what the Muslim community did in Michigan this year during the primary. It's that idea that it's more of a protest. So it's like
But
killing the
it
party.
doesn't help, right?
No. It depends. I'm not getting into the back and forth about whether it helps. It's a protest that some people see it as a protest to achieve or whatever outcome that they're trying. Just like any protest, you're
right,
trying to make your voice heard. So it's not about whether you agree with it or don't agree with it. This was their thing. It's a strategy. It's a strategy.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
the best way I can put it.
okay,
Yeah.
okay,
Well, I wanted to say I get why it's being done. I get that in a lot of people's opinions that the Democrats need to finally do some things that they say they're gonna do. They're not just gonna get our votes because you Democrated or whatever. But at this point, all I'm looking at right now, you have former President Trump and you have Vice President Kamala Harris. Those are the people on the ballot. And whether you choose not to vote or not, you're still making a choice for a candidate. You are. And my question is, will the down ballot hurt or help our cause? Will it help or hurt your cause?
Well, I think that depends on
Reparations
what
were,
your cause is. Whatever. I mean,
and well, as Black people, I think that a lot of times, and I'm not speaking for everyone, this is not a time to be, calling into whether, she's Black or anything like that. I mean, I think we get sidetracked by so many other things. Like right now, reparations is a thing that I am for. But right now, the bigger issue right now is who should we put in office? This person or that person? What makes the common sense right now? And all of the rest of the things that you're talking about, because what's happening is the people that are able-bodied, they are listening to people like you that you say are educated and that have master's degrees and all this stuff, and the people that may just have a high school diploma, and they are listening to you and say, well, shoot, I'm just gonna do it down ballot. Don't really understand it, from that point to the point that I was making earlier, that, explain it to me. Well, they're just saying, well, we're not voting. And so they're following your lead and just say, we're not voting. Not just not voting for president, not voting for nothing. And then it's gonna hurt our communities. And well, if you don't have family members that's struggling to pay health insurance and having problems with getting their medications and things like that, or going to the emergency room as if it's a regular doctor's visit, then oh well, I just see fighting the fight for a lot of other people besides myself, and having those educated people in the conference. I'm not knocking them. What I'm saying is your head is turned one way and other people are going to get away with a whole bunch of things while y'all are what I would say, and I don't want to be offensive, but lollygagging over there with that. We can talk about that, and it's nothing wrong. This is my opinion. There's nothing wrong with that. But while you're doing that, they're working on the master plan.
Okay. Thank you for
So
that.
yeah,
I was just going to say it's come to the top of the hour, so I don't know if you wanted to.
yeah, thank you, everybody. This is a much longer conversation. I do believe in the movement for reparations. I think that the case is clear and compelling, but because race is involved and the history of our country is involved, that it's an uphill battle. But there are communities in California and Evanston, Illinois, that are looking at concrete ways to do reparations even now. And on the down ballot issue, that doesn't necessarily imply that people are not going to make a choice at the top of the ballot. And what Sentero is saying is so much more complex. I just want to highlight that I and a few of the members of Bible Way Ministries International attended this past Saturday night an event sponsored by CAIR Georgia. CAIR is CAIR. It's an acronym that stands for the Council on American Islamic Relations. And one of the things they champion is peace in Palestine, peace in the Middle East. And one of the keynote speakers is a sister, a Palestinian activist from New York City that I met in South Africa, Linda Sarsour, and she was addressing the issue that Sentero brought up and that you just addressed, Minister Shannon, about whether people will vote for Kamala. There are some people out of conscience who cannot vote for her, and Linda Sarsour addressed it so well because she talked about kind of what you were saying, that some people out of conscience can't vote for her, but you need to consider the consequences of who you do vote for or not voting for anybody. And this movement is across the country for people wanting to boycott Kamala Harris. These are Democratic-leaning, liberal-leaning people who are saying because the ticket chooses not to address some vital issues to them that they cannot support her and they will not vote for her. And so I think it becomes an issue of conscience. And I think on both sides, I have met people who are so firm in their beliefs that I just have to respect where they are. I tell them why I'm going to vote for who I'm going to vote for. And I'm looking at the long view, the long picture, and that whoever gets involved, I think I need to be able to say, I voted for this person or I didn't vote for that person, but whoever gets in office, I'm there to hold them accountable. I think one of the reasons we are where we are politically, one of the reasons we are where we are with the Supreme Court is because conservatives have done something that we alluded to. They played the long game. We cannot afford not to play the long game. So I just want to affirm all of the comments, the back and forth. And then I also want to affirm all of the people looking online. Thank you, Kathy, for taking us online. A good number of people there checking us out, giving us love, giving us comments. We don't have time to shout out everybody, but thank you, thank you, thank you. And we'll catch you next week. I'll close us with prayer. Lord God, we thank you for Monday Night Live. We thank you for the exchange, the back and forth. I thank you for those in the chat, for those live on Facebook. I thank you for those live in the Zoom. We ask you to continue to bless us, to help us in every way, particularly with all of the challenges globally, nationally, those that we face personally. We thank you that we serve a God who blesses us to overcome. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Hey, God bless you. Thank you for joining us for Monday Night Live. We'll